Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing here with athletes, because you have a unique approach. Talk a little bit about that and the impact it's having.
Well, my approach is based around movement. So I want to enhance movement and make movement more efficient. So we can enhance an athlete's performance on the field, but also keep them healthy while during the process. So a lot of the exercises that I do in the weight room, on the turf, as far as speed and agility or resistance or strength training exercises, revolve around enhancing movement. So first thing I'll do is I'll take an athlete, I'll evaluate them with what is called a functional movement screen. That helps me to show weaknesses, asymmetries, discrepancies in the body during certain movements, and then I can modify or create a program to address those. And by addressing those issues and then working on the athlete's strengths already, therefore I've been able to enhance performance quite a bit. So the test results at combines, the results kids have experienced, young athletes have experienced, on the field of play, kind of speak for themselves.
Well, you deal with athletes across a broad spectrum.
Yes.
You deal with younger crowd
to elite pro athletes, yeah.
Right. Talk a little bit, let's talk just a little bit about the pro athlete or the elite college athlete. What type of things, what type of successes have you been able to achieve there?
Well, one of the great successes recently is Tim Toon. Tim Toon was Mr. Relevant in this year's draft. Tim came to me with 8 weeks to prepare, and I got him, at a 4.65 40 when we first got him here, and then on his pro day he ran a 4.43 and a 4.42. So going into the draft, his agent wanted, the goal was to get him into a camp. And then with the times he posted, not only in the 40, but his shuttle, his vertical, kind of his movement, he was drafted in the last round, or last pick of the draft. And, when he called me or I was able to get a hold of him that day, he was just elated. He was just, it had exceeded his expectations. And that's my goal, is when I get an athlete to exceed their expectations. And I set the bar high. I set the bar high for my training. I set the bar high for certain athletes. And I believe in expectations. But I always say, hey, why not shoot for the stars and land on the moon? So, so we, but that's one of them, some of the, you look at Manasseh Tonga, who again was this year, and people don't realize that when he first came to me, he had a pretty severe shoulder issue. And so we had to address that issue before we could really get into some of the performance aspects of his training. And yet he, signed as a free agent with the Oakland Raiders. So, those are just a couple recent ones as far as the pro athletes go. I guess, I don't know, should I expand more?
Well, I think it's also interesting that you have a lot of clients. They're not necessarily elite athletes, but they're here and they're training under you.
Yes. Well, I have 12-year-olds, and you talk about success stories. One of my success stories is a kid named Dallin, and when he came here, he literally could not run. He just shuffled his feet. And now, it's been 3 months later, he's going into some of his football practice, summer football conditioning stuff, and in some of the drills, he's one of the faster kids, And so for a kid, progress there, it's kind of, your idea of what success is. For me, success is just helping an athlete achieve their goals or achieve their dreams. And so for him to, come back to me with this grin from ear to ear and tell me, that he caught a teammate of his, or that he finished in the top, 5 kids in a conditioning drill, and just how far he's come. That's a success story for me.
Well, and you also, you're dealing with athletes from a lot of different sports, participating
Yes.
in a lot of different sports. How do you help these athletes in these different sports? What's the process?
Well, first I want to find out their individual strengths and weaknesses, and that's where, again, I talk about the functional movement screen. Once I've addressed those issues, then I want to look at their sport specifically, and look at the energy systems that are used, the movements that are used, and come up with a program that is going to transfer to the field of play. So an athlete just pushing a bunch of weight in the weight room but not seeing a difference in the movement or difference in functional strength on the field of play to me, I haven't really achieved what I want to achieve. So I want to make sure if I'm training a wrestler, that I'm targeting the energy system specific to wrestling, movement specific to wrestling, and strengthening those, as well as, you know, working on exercises to prevent injuries in each of those sports. If I'm working with a football player, totally different energy system. I'm looking, you know, at an athlete that is going to be very explosive, fast, and be able to recover, but not necessarily aerobically. It's definitely an anaerobic sport. And so I take all those things into consideration when I develop a program for a specific athlete geared towards a specific sport.